That's a good idea. It's an opportunity.
Have you seen these?
It's the, no, this is the County Road 44 business.
Okay.
For what?
County Road 44 approval business.
Morning.
That tree.
Morning, Jenny. Well, you all set for tonight?
No.
Yes, she is.
I need more time now that I find out
7
we're
o'clock.
an emergency from 1:30 to 4.
Yeah.
You'll be
You've had
fine.
4 years of prep and experience.
You've got plenty of experience.
Yeah. Is it?
We're on.
Yep, yeah, it's good. We're going, ready to go.
Good morning. I will call the County Board of Commissioners to order on this July 24th, 2018. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to ask to add one item, the appointment of election judges for the primary and general election. This could be a consent item, but I'm on the agenda anyway, so we could just make it 8C.
C?
Yeah,
Okay,
since you don't have
election
time to
judges.
read it. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
And Madam Chair, I passed out two personnel-related items that will need action as well, and we can include those under the administrator's report.
Okay,
One is accepting the administrator's evaluation for the year, and the other is accepting the disciplinary action for 2 employees.
okay, so we'll put that under U with, under C.
Thank you.
Is that all? Okay, so we will have a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. At this time, we're going to have we'll open this up for public comment. We will give you 5 minutes to express whatever your concerns are. If you'd step up to the table, sign in, and your 5 minutes will start after you've signed in. If anybody'd like to do that.
Went first, last.
Okay.
I'm Steve Frickman, and here with my wife Sharon. We live at 306 County Road 44, and we're on the agenda for around 10 o'clock in regards to us opening a small art gallery on our property. I say that I don't have too much to add to what's probably been presented on paper, just to say that our intentions are not to grow into a large business. That this is sort of a ma and pa semi-retirement art gallery, and we are artists as well. So it's our studio. And I've had some discussions with people in the neighborhood, and there's a mixed response. We have pretty strong support from some of our neighbors and some strong resistance from others. So, I think that's all I need to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike Shalmeski, and I live at 308 County Road 44. And I'm here to ask you to not approve this zoning for this art gallery. This is a very rural dead-end road, and we feel that the loss of privacy, the added traffic, doesn't fit this type of a neighborhood. It's very rural, very quiet. And the Frickmans here, even, you know, it's like, I have nothing against the artwork. It's nice, but it's the bringing in, besides, it's not just them that they're representing. It's at least 8 other artists. And so has to be more people that would come into a place like this. And we've seen some traffic, although we don't know right now how much traffic because of the process of this starting this year and them having to cease advertising until they go through whatever decisions are made here. But we found out about what's happening to our neighborhood through an ad in Northern Wilds, a monthly publication. That's how we were notified. Basically, we found out that we are having an art gallery that lists the hours from May 25th to October 7th, every Friday and Saturday, plus also part of the Crossing Borders tour. This is a road that is one of the fewer, you know, there's few dead-end roads that are truly as quiet as this here. We have people who walk up into our neighborhood, walking their pets, carrying their kids with them, because this is a nice, safe, quiet road to go to on the weekend. This is our escape from Grand Marais, which is trying to bring in Cook County all the traffic it can bring in. It's a tourist community, but it's like, we feel that an art gallery would be better suited on the highway or in town where the rest of them are, and the rest of the traffic we would like to see there. We would like to have on the weekends our ability to have an escape from this. You work all weekend and then you come home, and what do you have? You have additional traffic routed in on a dead-end road. So we just ask that you look at this here. There's very few of these roads left like this, and this neighborhood was really more of an agricultural, rural area. The people who live on this road, most of them intentionally chose the privacy. Well, this takes that away from this place from May through October, and it's the reason why I live there. It's privacy, and it's like, we just don't feel like anyone else in the neighborhood really was given any notification at all that this is what you have to accept. And I think you really need to look at these vanishing, quiet, private places. Do we have to have people come to every corner of Cook County, or is there a few places that can be left as a quiet, rural area? I'm not going to say much more except for that privacy for me, the nature, just that getaway from this town that seems to want to just keep on bringing it in here. I know it's about tourism, but it's like there's got to be some places for escape. And it's like we have everything invested into our place here. We can't go run away, and we don't have the money to go buy a square mile and situate ourselves in the center of it. That's not possible. But like I said, why many of the people in our neighborhood live there, it's that privacy, and that privacy that by bringing in traffic to an area that this isn't what would be a natural traffic flow, by inviting in people through the course of spring through fall. We just wouldn't see that kind of traffic unless advertised to bring it in there. So please, if you could just take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item we'll discuss is the consent agenda. Is there any item that you'd like to?
3E.
Did you, I think there were a couple others that
Oh,
wanted to
is there
speak.
more people? Oh, sorry.
Steve already introduced me. I'm Sharon Frickman, and we live at 306 County Road 44. We did do the fall tour last year, and we had 4 days of those 10 days. We were invited by the Cook County Visitors Bureau. We had signage everywhere, they advertised everywhere, and we only had 4 days that were busy. And we were not in a position where we could not handle the few cars that were there at the same time. This passed through planning and zoning 5-1. And the reason that it passed is that it was changed from a conditional use permit to an interim permit, where it will be monitored annually for 3 years. And when we did advertise, we only had 7 vehicles come up our driveway over Memorial Weekend on that Friday and Saturday. Those 7 cars, 1 of them was lost looking for Pike Lake. And typically, that is the traffic we see at the end of our driveway, is the poor, because of the poor signage, we get a lot of people looking for Pike Lake. Plus, we are already on the fall color tour map. And we're the only ones that have maple trees, 2, which we planted. But we do get traffic on our road. And the man who sat, I can't remember his last name now, that worked with the highway board, said that our road can handle the traffic. He was very clear. And we are working on children's signs to get children's signs up for the children that are in the neighborhood, because that's one of the requests. An interim permit took care of everything except for Myra Timer and Mike Shelmeski's issues. We are on a 20-acre parcel, and our gallery entrance faces away from them. It faces to the south, and they are a northerly neighbor. And Corey Belt is our closest neighbor, and he is actually for us going forward with this. So I think that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for letting us speak. I'm Myra Timer, and I live at 308 County Road 44 with Mike. And of course, we're the ones that are most affected by this business proposal from Sharon and Steve, in that, yes, we are on a 20, they're on their 20 part of the rest of their property and us, but unfortunately, the way the land is laid out, we're up on a hill, and we look down and see and hear what's happening down there. So for us, it really is impacting depending on how much traffic there is. And I feel like what I wanted to say to add to what Mike had to say was that there's great uncertainty, and I want you to really consider that in how much tourism and traffic that could bring. And for me, it's also about how it would affect the road conditions too. I think that this road doesn't get as much maintenance as it can on the end, and it could, depending on the amount of traffic, change those conditions and make it more unsafe. It's a narrow road, and so again, it's the privacy, but we can see and hear everything based on how the land is laid out. Also, when they had their original proposal, and I believe that this is different, but I want to make it clear that it's extra impacting for us that we not only do we value our privacy and the quietness, but also the night sky and not having traffic in the middle of the evening. And I think that got taken out, but I just wanted that to be clear in all of your minds, that it sounded like it was set, those hours were set from 10 to 5, I think, 10 to 6, and that would be only on the Friday and Saturday. And I didn't know if there were other events that they could host that would affect our night sky. The other thing is that they do have a lot of people that are supporting it, but all of those people get to go to their homes and they don't have to look and hear it. So thank you for considering us in this proposal.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything?
3E.
Okay. No questions?
Yeah, how did they, was this advertised for this opening? Is this like the chamber or the EDA when it was internal and nobody knew it was open? Diane?
Madam Chair, if I could, if we want to pull it, let's just pull it and put it under Diane for section 2, and she can explain how they
Yeah.
choose people since she's here.
Right.
And I would ask that we pull 3G from consent, because I said we'd address that later.
Okay, so we'll pull that out?
Yep, we'll pull that out, and we'll take
Okay.
action on that independently.
Motion to approve A, B, C, D, and F.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, our time frame is different. There's a mistake on here, so just push everything up to, the next will be Diane at 8:45 and 8:55 and 9, so we aren't going to be here till noon.
Oh, okay.
Now
Got
that you
it.
said that, we might be.
Yes. Well, I mean, according to pushing up a few minutes, we shouldn't
Yeah.
be. Okay, so the next item will be Diane Booth.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So it sounds like you had a question about the Cook County Community Center Board of Trustees, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so we advertise once a year. Usually when we have we have openings almost every year, every other year. And this year we had more applicants than we had positions for, so I keep them on file. And so then if we have a person who does go off, because in this case, we happen to have a person moving out of the county. So then we go back to those people who had applied and say, are you interested? And I take them in the order they come in. So the first one that I went to happened to be the person who was interested in doing that. So we just said, okay, great. Does that help?
Yep, just
Yeah.
needed some clarification on it.
Yeah, yeah. We always like to have a few people in our back pocket, because sometimes it's always hard to find people willing to do that. So when we do advertise, I kind of hang on to those applications, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Motion to approve 3E.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you. And so we can move on to the synthetic ice sheets. Some of you have been here long enough to remember this discussion. In 2011, the Hockey Association, we were dealing with the ice again, trying to figure out what do we want to do, and one of the things they came up with was, is synthetic ice an option? And so we came to the board and we said, you know, can we purchase like 8 sheets of ice, put them, of synthetic ice, put them out there, and allow the kids and the skaters to try them out to see if this is something that maybe would work, because that would solve a lot of problems if that would work. Unfortunately, the response was the kids didn't like them, the parents didn't like them, and we ended up not moving forward. The other piece that became really an important piece was the maintenance required on synthetic ice. The power washing every day, the going in and applying the Super Glide on top to make sure that the boards stay fairly good. So our little experiment, rather than buy $60,000 worth of synthetic ice sheets and doing it, we bought $3,000 worth of ice sheets to try. And so they have been in storage for the last 7 years. And I just had a call last week, actually, from Deb Mueller, of those of you who know Deb. She used to be our ice skating person. She skated internationally. And she said that she's putting together a show in the Twin Cities and a new company. And she said, I remembered you had those little sheets, she said, and I'd be willing to buy them at a reduced price. And I said, well, I have to find out if I can do that. So here I am. She is willing, we paid about $3,000 for the 8 ice sheets. She's willing to pay $800 because they're used. She's willing to come and get them, truck them, power wash them, and they're gone. So I would like to know, is that an option? Do we have to go out on a bid? Or if we have somebody interested, can we just sell them? So there, that's my question.
Okay, well, let's discuss synthetic sheets for the ice rink. Questions? Commissioner Sievertson or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It makes sense to sell them. And my only question would be, is there anybody else interested that'd be willing to pay more? And I seriously doubt it. So I'm kind of feeling like I would just like to okay this and have them disappear from storage and be used somewhere, and realize that mistakes happen, and the brilliance comes in finding good ways to fix the mistakes. So I'd be in favor of this.
Well, I'd like to ask our county attorney, is there any kind of statute or anything in policy that would cause us to be cautious about this?
Thank you, Commissioner Bershine. I thought this might come to me, which is why I directed my microphone to me. So I've recently looked at this issue. When a county government is going to sell personal property, the best, the statutory guidance is to put it on the open market, but open market isn't really defined anywhere. What's Deb's timeline? Like, when does she need them? She say?
Next weekend. But what I did tell her is we could do a rental fee.
Sure.
If that would be an option, possibly.
I mean, I think what the board could do is approve the sale of these ice sheets pursuant to whatever procedures the county auditor and the county attorney approve. We want to act consistently as we have in other sales. This is a small purchase. It doesn't need the full bidding process or anything like that. But we may want to advertise it on our website for 5 days or something.
Sure.
And call that an open market advertising, and if word spreads and people are gung-ho and want to pay more, then they can submit their proposal, I guess. So
Okay.
that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on that?
Well, I think I would agree with that. Yeah, it's a good way to go.
Commissioner Dukert?
I just love how easy it is to do things as government. It's just wonderful. That's it.
I'm gonna go along with what Molly advised.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that we make a motion to advertise on our website the sheets for about 5 days. Okay. All right, so I'll hear a motion on that.
So just a question before a motion, but will that work for this particular issue?
We'll make it work.
Okay.
We can make anything work. And I have no problem. I'll throw it out on Boreal too. I mean, I have no problem. I just don't think there's a big market for them.
Right.
Which is why I just kind of thought, well, I'll just come here rather than throw it out on the market first. But that's fine. No, not a problem.
Who knows? We might get a bidding war, and then Jan will be right, and we'll get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be right.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we advertise this for 5 days in the common market, and if no bidder is larger than $800, the sale could be going ahead at that time.
All in favor?
We need a second.
Or a second, sorry.
I'll second.
Any more discussion, comments? All in favor?
I would,
Aye.
can I
Oh,
suggest?
Excuse me.
One more thing?
Well, I mean, what I heard in Commissioner Bersheim's motion was that if there is no bid above $800, then approve the sale. You might want to make a contingency for if there is a higher bid. For example, if there, his motion, but if there is a bid higher than 800, then it goes to the highest bidder.
Yes, thank you. I amend that motion as she suggested.
Does everybody understand the motion? Okay. All in favor?
Jan's gotta say
Jan,
she
okay.
supports
Yeah.
that amendment.
Oh, yeah, I support that amendment
Okay.
to the motion.
All righty, are we ready to support? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you, Diane. Hopefully it'll work out. Next item is Highway Engineer Kristen Foster will give us some updates.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and colleagues. I'm here with a couple of updates from the Highway Department. I'll start with the mailbox post policy, which Cook County has been evaluating for a period of time. After hearing the feedback that we've heard when we were addressing this policy previously, the Highway Department, in conjunction with the Highway Advisory Committee, took a closer look at the mailbox policy, and what we've come up with today is a little bit different than what other counties do, but sometimes that's the right decision for Cook County. And before I get into the details of what we're recommending, I thought I would provide my perspective on policies in general, since this is the first one that I'm bringing forward for the department personally. I think it's important that policies set expectations. In this case, if the board moves forward with the mailbox post policy, residents will know what to expect as to when their mailbox post might or might not be replaced or upgraded, and staff will know what to expect about the posts that we should or shouldn't repair if they get hit by a plow or a vehicle, or depending on what happens. That said, as we look towards potentially implementing this policy, we could always update it if in a future winter we learn that this isn't working out for us for one reason or another, or we want to provide a different level of service than what we might set forward this morning. I just wanted to say that we're open to that as well. I don't think this sets the standard for the next 10 to 20 years if we don't want it to set the standard for the next 10 to 20 years. So getting into the specifics of the mailbox post policy that we have before you this morning, we are looking at upgrading to the swing away type of mailbox posts, and this just affects the posts, not the boxes themselves. So we would look at upgrading to the swing away posts as part of state aid or federal aid projects where it's required. For those residents who live along a county road or aren't affected by a state aid project in front of their house, they would be offered the opportunity to upgrade their post if they so choose. A post could be purchased at the Highway Department, and we would provide the installation instructions to go along with that if they so choose. So we aren't recommending investing county dollars or county resources in upgrading posts at this time. And as far as when the Highway Department would repair mailboxes would be if our snow plow hits it. So in the future, starting this winter, if our plow hit one of the standard supports, then we would replace it. If it was damaged by another vehicle, or if somebody prefers a unique type of post instead of a standard type of post, the county would not accept responsibility for repairing posts in that case. And I believe that's the general gist of what this mailbox post policy is at today. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you. Discussion on this, Commissioner Schaub?
I think we were talking about this 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, we were
I have
in
no
the
more questions.
Same committee.
Commissioner Duker?
I like when gist gets thrown into a conversation. And yes, it's probably been a very long time, and I would like to thank you for the work on this and getting it down to a 2-pager. Engineer Betts was a great engineer, very intelligent and very particular about rules and regulations and sticking to them. So it's been very nice to have you come in and to carry forward some of the things that he brought forward to us and to be able to interpret what we meant by what we were saying and what the public's perception is on it. That's a skill that I certainly don't have. So thank you very much for making it simple for us.
Well, yeah, I was involved in a discussion on this in the county advisory group several years ago. And it's time for fruition and putting it to bed. So thanks for your work on it. And it seems like a good good policy.
Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree. We've discussed this in great depth, and it's just right for us at this moment in time. Unless, Madam Chair, you want to comment on it, I'd be ready to make a motion.
Well, just to thank you for doing this. We discussed it, that's at the committee of the whole, and then we had 2 pages, and now you're down to 1 page, so that's good, very succinct. And I think it's a good plan to have for now. We have to revisit it in the future if something different would change, so, yes.
Okay, so I move to approve the mailbox post policy.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Further discussion, comments? Okay. We pass on that.
All right, thank you. And I have some new information on our County 17 project, so I might go out just a couple minutes over the agenda allotment here. There have been a few changes since Thursday morning. If I may provide an additional handout, Madam Chair and colleagues, I brought a few copies for the public as well, in addition to the information that's in the board packet. All right, I'll step through the information that I just provided for those who don't have the benefit of being here to see it. Last Wednesday, the Highway Department opened bids on Cook County's CASA 17 project, which is one of our bond project priorities for the Highway Department. And unfortunately, but I think not surprisingly, given the time of the construction season that we're in, the bids did come in higher than what we were hoping. We received 2 bids, and this would be to replace culverts on County 17, do the reclamation and the graveling this year, but it did not include the paving portion of the project, which we were hoping to fund with the bond funds. We received 2 bids, and the apparent low bidder is Northland Constructors in the amount of $4,343,695.90. And that is about 17% over our estimate for the project. Now to start off, I do think we could get better prices if the project were bid at a better time of the year. Maybe we would see more competition if we went that direction. But at the same time, this is one of our top priorities with the bond funds that are available. And I can't say enough about how good the community has been to work with on this project. When it came down to needing right-of-way or accelerating permits, looking at different design alternatives, I can't say enough positives about the working relationship that we've had with the Grand Portage community and the Tribal Council. So after our bids came in high, our work didn't stop there. Of course, we could rebid the project if we wanted to. Obviously, the lowest responsible bidder isn't hoping that we would do that. They're looking forward to working with Cook County and Grand Portage if we decide to move ahead in light of the bids. So we would look at different options. I think not unlike the challenging balance that we have with the capital projects, we have a challenging balance with our transportation projects as part of this bond issue as well. We were originally hoping the bond funds would support this project as well as Mineral Center Road paving. our Lutzen Bridge construction, County 45 design work, the Carlson Creek culvert replacement, as well as the Fifth Avenue West design contract. And our Lutzen bids came in favorable. That project is underway. These bids came in a little bit high. So what we took a look at is what would it take to move forward with this project? If you ask me, do we have enough cash on hand? Can we afford it? I would say yes, based on the analysis that we've done since bids were opened. We have the bond funds, just over $7 million towards highway projects, and we haven't accounted for the transportation sales tax that Cook County already has in the bank. We started levying for transportation sales tax needs in April of 2017, and if we forecast where we'll be at through the end of this year, we're looking at about 1.4 million conservatively that we could utilize towards any one of these needs. And you also have another source of funding available to you for one of the projects on the list. Specifically, as we look at the Fifth Avenue West design work, you could utilize Cook County's municipal state aid dollars for that very same purpose. So in short, we would be able to meet all of our needs and meet the priorities that we set forth if we moved forward and if we used the municipal state aid account to move ahead with the Fifth Avenue West project development. I would be glad to provide any more information, but that's a general overview of where we're at.
Thank you very much. Well, it's always interesting and disappointing, and, you know, when you think that the bids would come in and we'd have money and we could go ahead, but in reality, we have to look at it all. So we'll open it up for discussion. This is in County Road 17 is in your district, Commissioner Deschamps. Any comments about that?
Oh, yeah, I'd like to thank Christian for working on this. And I think the Grand Portage community is very excited for this project to finally come forth. We've been waiting for this road to get fixed for 40 years plus. They opened the new highway up there in 1963, and this road hasn't been touched since then. This is a CASA road. This road generates money for Cook County as CASA miles, and I'm glad to finally see that something's going back into it for the people up there and for the county.
That didn't answer the question. Can they wait another year if we redo the bids? Or would you
I would like to
prefer-
make a motion to approve the contract with Northland Construction.
Okay. That was my big concern. That was my only question, because I know we try to do the best with the monies that we have. I know in my district, we've had to put projects off for a year, which is not fun at all. And I personally don't like to be the one to tell the residents that they have to wait another year, and it doesn't matter if it's only one resident or 50 residents. It's not a conversation I personally like to have. And I hate to say it, it's not a new thing to have our engineer estimates fall short. I mean, it's just part of life as government. That's all I got.
Madam Chair, if we accept Bobby's, Commissioner Deschamps' motion, we should have a second before we continue with discussion.
A second.
Okay. Any more discussion, Commissioner DeKirk?
Nope.
Commissioner Bershine?
Yeah, I would like to say that in my experience with bidding, you know, it's a process. And you do the best you can, and you've got to monitor and adjust. And I support this because it's long overdue. And I think I am reading you as our highway engineer that you would recommend this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bersheim, I do believe we have the funds available to proceed. It's a bummer that the bids came in as high as they did, but this time of year, we're asking the contractor to do a lot of work before freeze up. And with a July bid opening, I'm not surprised to see prices that came in over estimate. We're asking them to do a lot of work and not giving them a full season in which to do it.
Okay, thank you. And there's nothing guaranteed that this is going to get any lower if we wait a year, and more than likely it might go up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Except that bidding in the spring could bring in more people, because that's sort of bidding season. We're sort of in emergency bidding mode in the middle of July. And so I'm not saying let's put this project off, because I know we've waited a long time, but I also, if we could save $1 million, that we shouldn't just rush forward. We should wait the 6 months and do the bidding in the spring once again. And that is what we are recommending the board reject all bids, is what the recommendation is. It's not to accept this bid, so, or the lowest bid at this point. So in your professional opinion, and I know this is really hard because, you know, to forecast the future, and the reality is prices have been exponentially increasing. My only holdback is that this is a bad bidding time, July. Everybody's really busy. You're not going to get as many bids in July as you're going to get in January, for instance, in my opinion. But I'm looking, Kristen, for your opinion on what you think could happen as a responsible spender of money on roads.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Severson, I think you characterized the gamble, shall we say, quite well. I do think we would get more bidders if we bid a different time of the year. I'm very confident in that. Would that translate to better prices? Your guess is as good as mine. A couple months back, I gave that discussion of scoping level estimates, engineers' estimates, and bids, and why they don't always align with each other. And one thing that we can't predict as government engineers is the market for the construction industry. I don't know how competitive it will be next year. I don't know if blacktop prices will continue to be as high as they have been since the Husky refinery fire. We just don't know that. I wish I had that crystal ball to tell you whether or not more bidders would translate to better prices next season, but we just don't know. That said, at the time that we typed up the board memorandum to reject all bids, of course, that was Thursday morning. It was less than 24 hours after the bid opening, and based on the information I had at that time, that would have been my recommendation, to reject all bids. Since Thursday morning, we have worked with county staff and internally at the highway department to see if we could move forward for the benefit of the community, and I feel more confident in moving forward with this project if we so choose.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could add, at the time that we were coming up with the bonding for this group of projects, we established engineers' estimates for all the projects, and we put them all together, and we bonded for $7 million for highway improvements, to include the 5 projects listed here. And even though this project, on Wednesday, when the bids came in, my first thought was we're not going to be able to support this. It's not going to work within the budget that we've allocated. But Kristen and Lisa and Brady have worked to identify the fact that, yes, we can accomplish everything on the program with the funds that we do have available. And given that and the uncertainty, I think that does change the nature of we're in a different place today than we were Thursday morning, because now we know we really can accomplish everything on the program with the funds that we've dedicated to do that. So, and we bonded for those funds. We bonded specifically for the projects listed on this list. And if we can access the municipal CASA money to do the engineering for County Road 5, and we have the opportunity to do the Carlson Creek project using the township funds or the UT funds, as we've been discussing, then we can still accomplish everything on the list with the funds that we've allocated. And that does change the nature of the problem from what it originally looked like on Thursday morning.
Got it.
And at this point, yeah, the crystal ball is kind of dark. Does February look different? It certainly could generate more interest. But that's all I would add, is that our goal was to, and this is the same conversation that we're having, and I'll give an update later on the rest of the capital projects on the $2 million portion of that is our goal as we develop that bond list and that project list was to accomplish these program items within that amount of budget. And we know that there's some opportunity to be flexible and move things from one place to the other. And on Wednesday after the bid opening, I was like, wow, this isn't gonna work out. We're gonna have to take a second run at it. But the work that's been done suggests that we really can accomplish this program if that's what the board chooses to do.
So refresh my memory on this particular project now, on 17. So it will go from Highway 61 up through Mineral Center and then back down to Highway 61?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct. This project includes the Mineral Center Road as well as Old Highway 61, together known as County State Aid Highway number 17. It upgrades the culverts along that full length of road, and the portion that is proposed to be paved next year as part of a separate bid would be just the Mineral Center Road portion.
And how much do you think they could accomplish before winter?
Madam Chair, if the board feels comfortable moving ahead today, we have asked them to complete all the work except for the paving before this winter, if the weather holds out.
And remind me, who is the bidder on this? Is it Northland?
The lowest.
The lowest bidder?
Yes, the
North-
lowest responsible bidder is Northland Constructors of Duluth.
Okay. And the other projects here, let's see, Fifth Avenue and Carlson Creek, would that be done also this year?
At this point in the season, we aren't expecting to get the Carlson Creek culvert designed, ordered, and installed this year. That would be something we're looking at as part of the 2019 budget, but still utilizing the bond funds.
Okay, and Fifth Avenue?
Fifth Avenue West, we are moving ahead, working with LHB on that design work. That is already underway. There will be public meetings to come this fall or this winter sometime, we're expecting. We have not identified construction funds for Fifth Avenue West quite yet. That would be largely dependent on Highway User Tax Distribution Fund receipts within the state of Minnesota, as well as Cook County's transportation plan moving forward. But we have made the commitment to develop the Fifth Avenue West project and involve the public in doing so. And we are moving forward with that piece of that project.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dukert.
So most of this is bonding and transportation. I know our transportation tax, we had a huge list, but on bonding, do we not kind of have to, I don't know, it kind of isn't even the word. We specifically stated what we were using those bonding dollars for, which is these projects. So even if we rejected this and somehow saved money, we couldn't allocate it towards another project, correct?
That's correct, Commissioner Dukert.
I mean, that
The
kind
the capital project, when we issued the bonds, specified projects, and only projects on that list can be used for with those funds.
Which would be my concern if there was $500,000 or $1 million that we could allocate somewhere else. But in this case, this money is set for this. I always want to save. And we always talk about when we reject, if we have to do it in the following year, we're looking at a minimum of a 5% increase in the gamble, even if we get more bidders. So like you, Commissioner Stevenson, I was nervous, and I know usually you want to save money, but in this situation, I think that we are okay moving forward and approving this project at these amounts and getting it done this year. I don't think we're gonna save a whole lot by not doing it. So after the discussion and the questions with the engineer, I am very comfortable. I just wanna make sure that your motion was to approve lowest bidder, not to reject this, cause the agenda was to reject the request.
Well, I approve the contract with Northland.
Okay.
But I think one of the biggest drivers in this project is the material for the road. It's coming from off the reservation, and even if you rebid it in 19, that material isn't gonna get any closer to the reservation.
It isn't?
No, it's not.
You're not gonna move it?
It is the biggest driver in this project.
Okay.
so.
Okay, I'm comfortable. I
Right.
was a little apprehensive, but I'm comfortable at this point with moving ahead with this.
Okay.
I don't like spending more money, but I don't know that we're gonna save a whole heck of a lot by waiting, so.
Any further discussion?
Nope, I'm comfortable now.
We've had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, good deal.
Thank you for the thorough discussion.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kristen.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
your
looking
work.
at it further after your original
Sticker
apprehension.
shock.
Good
Yeah.
professional work.
Yeah.
Did we want to do anything about snow plowing, or did we already do that?
That was in the consent agenda?
Was the consent? Okay, we're done with that. Thank you, Kristen.
Okay.
And does Bill Lane know we have a new time schedule?
Oh,
We do at
He
nine.
should, he should shortly.
Okay.
okay.
Well-
Should we take a break?
Do you need a 5-minute break?
I do.
She does. We'll have a 5-minute break.
There's cherries for snacking.
Thank you.
I just looked over there and wow,
for
take a
some.
break.
I asked him to come. He can explain if there are any questions.
Well, you know, I noticed it thinking, oh my, that must be gonna take a long time. I'm between all these people. That's to say. I thought obviously somebody had a really big problem and should have knew about it.
Yep. That's pretty good. And the Rainier cherries are all beautiful.
Who's got Tyler?
Chili fresh.
Mhm.
I need a knife.
Hey, so I've been trying to get hold of your Aunt Pat. Her mailbox is full. Do you ever try to call her? Oh, I finally emailed her this morning at 6 o'clock. I'm trying to call her, and every time I call it, it's straight to voicemail saying, this box is full.
Of course, if you put it up high originally, then the bidders find that out.
Yeah, I would say, this is our budget, bid accordingly. And you have cherries, is that?
Yeah. We have a lemonade mix here too. Maybe that's for the afternoon. What, 3.5 hours of emergency preparedness? And we've already
Yeah.
done 3.5 hours on live.
Well, yeah, and I sat in a 2-hour one during conference. I took that 2 months.
Oh.
Yeah, and then it's been so long since I did that, I don't know if I remember anything.
All the acronyms.
I know I can't cram anymore like I used to.
Me neither. I am done cramming.
Really? I know, I try, but I can't do it. Something in my mind will distract me.
I know.
The more I try, the more I can't do
Clear
it.
my head from this, clear my head from that. Get ready for the blast tonight.
Yeah, you meditate.
I meditate, oh yeah.
Because to me, that, if I could do that, I would do that.
You got it, yes.
Yeah.
Go find the quicker reach. Well, I'm gonna go home first.
You have the experience in, I think, just to calm your mind so that you can find the details and information. Because it's in there.
It's in there,
Yeah,
yes.
there's a lot of, yeah, to trust yourself, it's in there.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's hard.
Hit puncture when I forgot.
Thank you. I didn't bring you down, 'cause I didn't see it yesterday. Somebody tried to, not me.
I just assumed it was you.
It wasn't me. 'Cause I said, I wanted this on Monday. I like to be prepared ahead of time.
You're tough.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on. No, my signature means nothing.
He presented this.
That's right, thank you. Jay, I'm sorry I didn't see you before.
That's okay. I'll maybe pop in after the meeting today just for a couple of
Sure,
pointers that I need.
sure.
And then I need to move on for the rest of the day
Mm-hmm.
and night.
I wonder why this is here. Does this ever get used? It's a weapon?
I think sometimes it's on that desk, right? For,
Yeah, what would you put in there?
I think it probably, a microphone,
It's a microphone stand.
Understand.
a wireless microphone? Or is it not wireless?
Looks like a microphone stand.
Yeah. It looks like it belongs on that desk for when somebody's there.
Really? Yeah, I've been doing the. So you got a full schedule then, huh?
I gotta have the test back by noon.
Really? How's the fishing?
We fished a little bit on Gator last night. We're getting big mayfly hatches.
Really?
So that's
Huh.
supposed to, well, mayfly jacket.
Yeah. How are the biting insects? How are the biting and sucking insects?
Even the bikers, you know, some of the 99.
Shaw gave me his spelling.
This one guy had just a swarm of
Yeah, they're bad.
Wow, they hurt.
Yeah, they're no fun.
Yeah. So that would be a good reason to be covered in mud.
I gotta have a leaky mug. That's the issue.
Okay, Myron. Time's up. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with our next line item here, or item to discuss is bill with home business.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is an item that was presented to the Planning Commission on July 11th, and it was a home business request from Steve and Sharon Frickman up on County Road 44. And in receiving information about the request, it came to our attention that this operation was already ongoing, doing so under, you know, kind of a fairly discrete operation venue and that sort of thing. And it's affiliated with an art gallery, art studio type thing. So upon finding out about the operation, it had already been initiated. Land Services spoke with the property owners and asked that they cease their advertisement of the operation until such time that the Board of Commissioners could come in with a decision. So we processed the application, brought it to the Planning Commission on July 11th with the intent of presenting it as a conditional use permit. In the process of discussion and deliberation, the Planning Commission opted instead to identify it as an interim use permit. Now, there's a couple of differences there. Conditional use would apply to the Frickman property into perpetuity. The interim use permit has a discrete time frame attached to the allowance, which gives us a little more involvement with the process of overseeing permit operations and considering impacts to the neighborhood and that sort of thing. And I think if you read the narrative, the review of the Planning Commission meeting was pretty emblematic of what there is some controversy and some opinions that are fairly strong and oppositional in some regards. And the idea of a home business is thrust upon Land Services because we do have discrete criteria for a home business operation, and we can invoke both the land zoning ordinances and also the land use guide plan, which has specific criteria identified for expansion of business operations and opportunities in Cook County. And I think that was really the focus of the discussion thereafter. We acknowledge that there are things that we aren't familiar with. What's going to happen? What are the impacts? A couple of the components that were identified were road impacts, safety of children. There were 7, I think, toddler or early age children identified in the County Road 44 landscape. And also the impact, the aesthetic qualities of County Road 44, it being a dead-end road with not a lot of traffic other than residential use and that sort of thing. It isn't a throughway. It doesn't connect to anything. It dead ends, you turn around and you go back to County Road 7. So those were all components of the discussion, and I think what happened in the discussion and the ensuing debate, if you will, was the idea that given the constraints of a home business, which are, you know, there are specialized structures and things like that, the home business fit well. It has advertisement. It relies on public visitation to have success as a business. And so that fit well. The home business fit well. The focus then was reduced to the conditions that would allow this use to be initiated under county approval within the constraints identified by the Planning Commission in deference to the comments received from the public. So we did identify 8 conditions, which are pretty inclusive, and probably the most functional condition is the idea that Land Services is going to review this annually. It's not a big burden for us. We ask that the operators also give us an idea of a tally of visitors and that sort of thing. And the review is in the guise of a 3-year interim use permit extending through 2021, and at that point they will have to come back in for an additional permit. And given the myriad of comments and the concerns, we can't address those without experience. But what we can do is focus the discussions and the use in a manner which give us the ability to interact with the owners. And those are all facilitated by the fact that it's a 3-year interim use permit, and we have an ability to intercede when need be. Also, if there are expansions and things like that, the burden is on the applicants to come in and amend the conditional use permit, which means that it will go back to the Planning Commission, back to the Board of Commissioners. So from a complete perspective of land use, zoning, it meets our threshold. Obviously, it's not a 100% accepted process at this point, but I think we can make it that in the guise of our conditions and that sort of thing. So the Planning Commission did vote 4-1 to approve the request by the Frickmans with the conditions identified, and they also at the same time recommended that the Board of Commissioners echo their actions and approve it as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll open this for discussion. Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is probably the most not black and white issue I've encountered as I've sat in this chair. And I have some serious concerns about it being approved. I have no concerns about the Art Along the Lake portions on either end of but the whole summer, every weekend. This is a very special neighborhood, and these people have lived and worked together for almost 40 years. It's a pretty tight-knit community, and they really love each other, which is really expressed in every piece of this. And there's so many good things about the project, you know, the fabulous artists and that rural setting, that very idyllic European model. You know, you can imagine Provence and all the great arts activities that happened in Provence at the turn of the century. But living here in Cook County and understanding and experiencing the intensity that is this tourism economy and inviting a piece of that into this idyllic neighborhood scares me, frightens me. On the other hand, I mean, the Art Along the Lake piece, the events piece, that sort of works really well with the greater good of Cook County. But the every day or every weekend in the summer really scares me for everyone involved. And I don't know if that's an adequate response, but and it also puts us, the county, the land services in the bad cop seat, having to monitor and so I would say, so what are those criteria for monitoring? Is it if a bus shows up, do you shut it down? If the whole idea of buses and the way people travel these days, I can imagine campers with 5 bikes and a boat hauled behind it going to this studio. Everybody wants to go to something like this. It's a pretty attractive, it's an attractive attraction. And it isn't always, it's not so much about serious art buying, it's really about something for people to do that's really interesting, and who doesn't want to visit this idyllic setting and experience fabulous art? Who doesn't want to do that? So I'm a little nervous that the traffic will be intense. And I don't know how we monitor that. I don't know what numbers you set as limits, and then we're engaged in that bad cop scenario, so that in 3 years, the traffic has increased a great deal. And also the owners of this thing have invested a fair amount of money and time, and hopefully it's successful. So how do they step back from it if it's really become an issue for the neighbors? It's going to be harder to step back from it in 3 years, particularly if it's successful, and I would imagine that it will be. It's an amazing thing. So, but I think of all those little individual homeowners, landowners in that neighborhood as having created little sanctuaries, little places to get away from the hustle and bustle, which is also necessary in this community because it's so intense. Summer is so intense that we need those getaways and those retreats, and artists especially need those getaways and retreats. So I see this as not a black and white issue at all. I'm scared. I'm scared of it. Yeah.
Commissioner Bergheim?
Wow, well, yeah. It's a tough one. I live at the end of 2 miles at the end of a private road. And we had 3 lots open up past our end of the road. And all of a sudden we have people going down there. And for those of us that live there, you have to think about, well, what are our rights to, as individual property owners, to control what other property owners do? And is it, first come, first served, or what? I have a tendency, I talked to Mr. Chmielewski on the phone, and very sympathetic to their situation. I can identify with that. So I have a tendency to think, what's the best thing we can do now, because it more than likely will set some precedent in the future. So my question to you is, and I'm asking from, maybe I don't have a clear understanding of our land use policies as it pertains to this. What factor does having a county road play in this? It's accessible by a county road. That's a public road. The county would be responsible, as this process indicates, that we could somehow or the other set some conditions on that use of that public road. So I'd like to dig a little deeper in this and ask you, number one, what are the implications of having a county road as this issue? is it a factor at all? And then, you know, what is a designated land use for this area? Is there anything that's been done before or previously that would indicate a way we should proceed?
Commissioner Bersheim, those are really good questions. As far as the impact to the county road, we are aware of a maintenance process and that sort of thing. I would defer to the highway department on any issues of foreseen or predicted impacts. That's a huge issue, and it was a common thread for some of the comments during the course of the meeting and leading up to the meeting. So that's a really relevant concern on your part, and I think on everybody's part. If you look at it, it's a FAR 3 zone landscape. There's a 5-acre size requirement there, and there's been a couple of subdivisions in there which have increased the number of properties on County Road 44, which necessarily increases the traffic and that sort of thing. And from a land services perspective, we look at the potential for, you know, the ultimate division of property. There's some larger tract parcels which have the potential to create, you know, 10 to 15 additional properties on County Road 44. Now, that's not predictive or anything like that, but it is a process that we have to look at and say, okay, so we have a finite, or what we believe to be a finite proposal. How do we bring in the potential or the outliers, the permutations into that process? So every description has been accurate. It's a dead end, it's quiet, it's bucolic, it's everything that you would want on a dead end road. So that's, I mean, it's hard to go beyond that without an actual experience. You don't know how cold the water is until you put your toe in it. And we're kind of putting our toe in it right now.
Okay, so to follow that up, you're saying that this is a unique case that hasn't come up before?
Well, we do home businesses pretty regularly. It's the logistical situation. It's a dead-end county road. How many dead-end county roads are there? I don't.
A lot.
Are there?
Cotton Flint Trail.
Well, right.
Just about everything is dead end.
That's a special.
Trail.
That's a special.
We talked about this a lot.
goes
You
to
can't get
something
out.
Okay. Well, so that was a poor rhetorical pose there. But so the issue is that it's something that we don't know, and obviously the logistics in County Road 44. We have an artist that's already in residence there, and she voiced concern about the same thing. But the last person that spoke at the Planning Commission meeting was the recipient of the last subdivision, and he correctly identified that his bigger concern is not what happens at the end of the road, it's what happens to all the parcels that potentially could bring in 20, 30 more vehicles, that sort of thing. So is that a larger zoning, highway department planning issue? Perhaps, but I think, and just stepping back to the interim use process, you know, we're putting conditions on here which in our opinion are pretty restrictive yet facilitative. I mean, we're kind of Switzerland right now in our approach to this. So the idea of putting it into a permitting process is, you know, we've done everything we can to facilitate and to listen, and now it's a matter of your decision giving us additional direction.
Mr. Lane, if this board denies this, does it go back to the Planning Commission?
No.
So that's it when it gets,
done.
it's done. Okay, Commissioner Bersheim, your question about precedent. The Planning Commission has gone to many, many sessions with legal peoples. We just had one in the last 6 months where our decisions are case by case. So I mean, if you look at Cook County, it's unique. One dead-end road is different from another dead-end road. So every single thing that comes to us, we're supposed to walk in and make the decisions based on that situation and that request and not past approvals. So I know it's hard to do that, but when you ask about precedent, it's case by case. And it was mentioned this morning that it was passed 5-1. I'd just like to clarify it was passed 4-1, not 5-1. And there was quite a bit of discussion. I'm comfortable with a business on a county road because county roads are often in better shape than other roads. I've driven on Forest Service and DNR roads, and I don't know about putting a business on one of those roads sometimes with the condition they're in. And then it's not a good idea for the board to make decisions based on fear. You gotta make decisions based on reality. And I know this is gonna change what happens on the road, but you know, the property could sell to someone who's got 10 kids and they all have boyfriends and girlfriends and you got 20 cars coming in and out. You know, when you look at use of road, you just can't determine. I know that it's a concern and it's a fear, but we can't dictate how many kids you have and how many cars they have and what they drive coming in and out of the property. And we don't know until we know, and so it was a good plan for the Planning Commission to change it from conditional to interim. It's kind of like our gravel pits. They get evaluated every year, and we have had to put the brakes on a gravel pit and go in and do the tough work. And so interim use does have a lot more oversight than a conditional. At this time, vacation rentals are an allowable use in this area, so everybody on this road could turn their property into a vacation rental and have 3 or 4 cars coming into every single property every single day. I mean, there's lots of things that could happen. So the concerns about what will happen to the road or what will happen to the neighborhood, we don't know until we go forward. And I know it makes me nervous, but I think that the best thing we could do is to see what happens and review it and look at it, and if it's not a good thing for the community or the neighborhood or the road or whatever reason and the conditions aren't met, then we take a step back and look at it again. It has to go through the process again, and maybe we change the conditions the next time it comes in and we make it better. So that's all I got.
That's all you got?
I know, I ramble.
Commissioner Deschamps.
I was reading some of the letters of support for this, and they kind of interested me because a lot of these people that are writing letters of supporting this, which will increase traffic on this road, were actually at our border road trail meeting opposing more traffic on roads. So what side of the street are they on here? Are they supporting one thing and not the other? And I just find that interesting.
You're not alone. I did mention during the meeting it'd be difficult to pass this through this board after all of the talk we've had over the last 2 months about not letting any more people into any more roads that don't go to downtown. So, but I mean, this isn't a discussion on that. This is a discussion on this business. I know, it's hard.
I guess I would address a couple of concerns here that would be reviewed annually by the land services. So you would be asking for numbers of cars, people who would be coming there, and the strict hours between 10 and 5 for this particular period of the summer. Would that be the criteria?
Correct. And along with that, we would be receptive to adjacent property owner comments and feedback. That would be part of the review, not just from the owners, it would be from everybody.
So in 1 year, basically about 1 year from now, those particular facts would be presented to you or the Planning Commission, or just to you?
The intent would be to do an annual review, and even though we're semi-annual right now, it would be to do one at the end of the year of 2018. If there are issues there, it has to be brought back to the Planning Commission before it comes back to the Board of Commissioners. So any issues that are presented, concerns, that sort of thing, then, and we make a decision in Land Services to, maybe we need to reevaluate that, it comes back to the public process of the Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners. And then thereafter, annual reviews up through 2021.
Okay. Having had businesses in Cook County, I was always aware of my signage. Signage here would be, have those particulars been discussed, how that would be advertised?
It is a condition of the permit that they have to adhere to the Cook County sign ordinance. It's my understanding that the Frickmans have approached Land Services for a sign permit application. So that's within compliance at that point.
I'm concerned about the placement, probably on 45, on 44, and who knows wherever. This is so new for us to discuss.
But they can only put signs on their property.
Well, they could have something on 40, on County
If
Road
another
7 to
property
get
owner
them up there.
applies.
And that's what I mean. You know, will it start at 7 and then go to 44, 45? And that's something, when you start a business, you want to have signage. I mean, you're going to have, as it was indicated in the Northern Wilds, a little map of where they are. And the reason I'm asking this is that I really only want to look at this for a year because it's so new. We don't, as we have discussed, we don't have a handle on how these types of home businesses in a rural area would work. So,
That's why we do the permit,
yeah.
instead of a free-for-all.
Any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I would only consider it, and I'm grateful that the planning, Land Services changed from a conditional use permit to an interim use permit. It makes total sense. It's the only way that makes sense to me. But I'm still extremely skeptical. Even the, because I know the folks who wrote these letters, they love Sharon and Steve, and so they want to support this, but they also fear for their sanctuaries that they've created, invested a lot of time and money and space, so forth into, and have chosen their places based on that quality of life there. So I'm concerned about the ball falling here to monitor and be the cop of this whole thing. But I'm not real comfortable with the criteria. The criteria doesn't feel well defined to me. And
Can we as a board change the criteria, or does it have to go back to the planning commission?
Planning commissioners.
So if we want to change the criteria, we have to make our suggestions and it goes back to the planning commission.
okay, so maybe that's my question.
One
What
of the
is the
suggestions-
criteria?
One of the suggestions I had made, which I'm not on the planning commission, was that it be permitted after road bans are lifted, which would cover some of the concerns about condition of the road.
Mhm.
But
I'm not
that
worried about the road.
impacts their business.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I
just
don't
worried about
know
the quality of life. I'm not worried about the road.
What conditions would you add? I mean, this is pretty restrictive for a business.
Okay, so I do like the one that says parking has to be on the property.
Mhm.
And, okay, so let's just say there's parking off the property. So how does that, so is that quantified, and how many days is there parking off the property? And, so there's parking off the property in year 3, and then suddenly the permit is revoked. So many days of the year.
And Commissioner Severson, I can address that. The condition
Yeah.
establishes parking is restricted to the property. We don't have.
Period.
We don't have variables attached to that. And and after the discussion, I mean, we did modify conditions based on the planning commission meeting to reflect some of those concerns, obviously. Is it an exhaustive list of conditions? No, because this is a relatively new venture, as far as, like we've mentioned, the logistics, the aesthetics, and all that sort of thing. So, this is, as Commissioner Dukert suggested, this is a restrictive list based on the flavor of the Planning Commission meeting. And so, you know, as from a
The discussion was as hard as this one.
And we're complete, we understand, we, like I said, we're truly in the middle here. And so the ears hear both sides. I mean, we're not deaf to the concerns or the opportunities identified, but it's a tough ball to push down the hill.
So I just have one more question. So this would be reviewed, if it passes, it's reviewed in a year?
At
And
the end
then
of this year.
At the end of this year? At the end, like the end of December? And then if you hear so many complaints and there is parking off the road, you would revoke the permit? Or we would revoke the
We would
permit?
begin the process of that process. We would initiate that process. That would again have to go back to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Commissioners.
Of course,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So we don't
Yeah.
administratively say, that's it.
Right, of course.
This is your ballywick now.
Right.
It's kind of a suspension. It's put on hold until reviewed, is what we did with the one gravel pit that we had concerns. We put it on hold until everything was addressed. And similar to gravel pits, the gravel pits don't operate in the winter, so it was
Right.
reviewed in the winter, and you had to wait until opening season to review things. Myron, you had another question, didn't you?
Well, I think it was partially answered. Item 2, shall be reviewed annually by Land Services with presentation to the blah, blah. So this is gonna come back to us in 2021, or is it gonna come back to us at the end of the year? This is not clear to me, item 2.
Item 2, it will be, as Commissioner Dukirk suggested, it is similar to the gravel pit reviews. It will be brought up to the Planning Commission and subsequently to the Board of Commissioners on an annual basis.
And so the public will be invited to register
Planning
some
Commission.
concerns, or excuse me.
Yes,
the Planning Commission.
it's an open meeting.
Okay, so
format.
that'll be
Yep.
published and saying this is a review of this
Yes.
conditional use permit. Okay.
Okay, well.
Well, I would just like to comment one more thing too, that, you know, I know that it's case by case and I respect that, but in a legal world, there's always precedent. And so, you know, I would ask the Planning Commission, when you do some of these things, is to think in terms of, you know, where is this gonna take us next? Do you see what I mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, we can't, you know, predict processes that involve multiple entities. You know, it's just beyond. What we did in this process was we were presented with an issue. We defined the scope of resolution of that issue, and then we moved forward through the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners.
Yes.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Bershon. The issue of precedence is really important and taken very seriously by the Planning Commission. There's actually 2 different types of precedents. There's actually the legal precedents, which is we're not setting any legal precedents here because everything is taken on a case-by-case basis and is evaluated. Each case is evaluated in its own time, its own location, and its own circumstances. So we're not setting any kind of legal precedents. But the other precedence is the one of social, political type of precedents. If another request of a similar matter comes before the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners again, then yes, it would be just naturally considered in the light of this one. But there is no legal precedence that we're setting and
Okay.
forcing ourselves down.
Yeah, I
the
guess,
road.
thank you for clarifying that, but, you know, that's always you can't deny someone and say you did it for someone else. It gets very political.
So what I'm hearing is that we might be leaning toward maybe a one-year interim with a full report at the end of this year to see how
That's already
it's
what the
going.
interim is. It's a,
Yes.
the interim, yeah. It's a
Right.
3-year interim permit with an annual review. It's already in the conditions.
Right. And is that what we want to approve for now?
That's what we're being requested to do, or not do. I think we're clear on that.
Yes. So we're clear on that. Any more discussion? Questions?
Procedural question, is this a proposal that we would need to have a motion on?
Yeah, we have to approve it or deny it.
All right.
And we would have the option at the end of this year, in reviewing it, that we wouldn't find it satisfactory.
The planning commission would review it and send a recommendation to this board.
Okay.
So we're really dependent on the process, which we, of
Yeah.
course, always are.
Right.
So far, it's been
We're-
working
we're a democracy.
spectacularly. I trust the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It tweaks me a little, depending on the process.
Yeah. Is anybody ready
That's
for a
good.
motion? More discussion? Any other thoughts?
I'll ask the question.
Yes.
What if we don't act on this?
We can motion to table it for further discussion or send it back to the planning commission.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bershon, if the board does not act on it and we go past the 60 days, it's automatically deemed as being approved in accordance with Minnesota Statute 15.99, which is often referred to as the 60-day rule. You can table it and discuss it, but we can only get one extension ourselves unilaterally of that timeline. To extend that timeline any further, the applicants would have to agree to that, any extension in it. So you could table it if you wanted to discuss it further. One of the observations that I wanted to basically throw in, having listened to part of the discussion anyway, is that naturally, in the course of the deliberation, especially a new type of use that's in an area, we've heard it with dog kennels, and we've heard it with a number of different types of uses. Automatically, we go to the worst possible scenario in our minds of what can be the final resulting situation with any particular case, and we imagine that in our own backyards, and certainly nobody wants to have something uncomfortable or a camper with a boat and some cruising down the roads or anything like that. It really conjures up images that definitely impact our thinking adversely towards the project. One thing that I would offer up in my nearly 20 years of being here is that in nearly every case that we brought through, including kennels, that the worst case scenario has never really been realized. That we always have this kind of exaggeration, I don't want to say exaggeration, but kind of overthinking it a bit much and really painting it much worse than they typically end up being. So, that's why the board, the planning commission did take the caution of recommending a switch to the interim use permit, which gives a number of safeguards in as an annual review, and then the permit itself would only be going for 3 years, assuming all of the annual reviews came back positive. So there's a number of safeguards that are built into that process. I just wanted to offer that.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Dukert?
So bouncing off of what Mr. Nelson said and Bobby's comment of border to border when I hear the fear and anger and the ads, and it's all this internal, the worst case scenario is gonna happen, and it, you know, I'm sitting back looking going, I don't think so. So I'm going to make the motion to approve this application, knowing that the process has been followed and that we're gonna check it in 6 months, and that if for some crazy reason the 20 years of Tim doing this in the office comes to fruition and the worst thing ever happens, we'll pull the IUP. But at this point, we can't, I don't feel like we should deny this based on fear and anxiety and not knowing what's actually gonna happen. So, motion to approve it.
Do I hear a second?
Okay, I'll second.
Any further discussion or comments?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes.
if I could make a comment.
Helpful.
If we're addressing process, and that's really what we're talking about is process, this has been run through our planning, our land services staff. It has been run through the planning commission, and it is the responsibility of this board to approve or reject this. And the only reason to reject this, we can't really restrict people's rights to use their property the way they want to beyond the scope of our established ordinances. And the application for an interim use permit for this use in this zoning area is permitted with the conditions, with the discussion, and it is the responsibility of the board to affirm or deny the request by the planning commission. And if the case hasn't been made that you need to reject it, then you really do have to support the work of the planning commission and trust the process that there is going to be review and oversight to this. And I know that these conversations get emotional and people have feelings about them, but we really have to affirm the process that this has been reviewed, our staff has done their work, the planning commission has done their work. And I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the fact that this isn't a rubber stamp of something like this. But it is incumbent on the board to take action on this. And a denial has to be made based on good evidence and not based on personal feelings on it.
And also then I would expect that by November, December, there would be a report then for the end of the season, which would go to the planning commission and then to us.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so you've heard a motion, we've had a second, we've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Same sign. 4 to 1.
Thank you.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is it possible we could skip ahead to Rod Roy?
Oh,
He's
sure.
alone at the airport today, and he
Okay,
came
so
down to
won't
help on
every day.
this. I think we can get through it pretty quick.
In case the planes are coming in. Okay, Rob.
Back on schedule.
Not the planes we worry about.
The real
Tourists
deal,
driving on the track.
So,
Yeah, the inadvertent schedule.
Reality.
Okay.
so the order of the issues is, first is that requesting a grant
Thank you for
agreement
your,
for a
clarification
new
of our rules.
beacon, pole, and ramp work at the seaplane base. So we've already put in a request to FAA and MnDOT for grant agreements for this project, and then if offered, I'd like to authorize the board chair and the auditor treasurer to sign the agreements upon review and approval of the county attorney, and this is so that the project can get done this year. It's kind of a short time period, and given when the board meets. So that would allow us to sign those grant agreements, which you can see on the back here. So, and then Rod is here to describe the projects.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. I feel like I just cut the line, did I? With your permission.
With permission, yes.
I don't know what you want to know about it. I think this is an easier process than what I just heard. The numbers are in front of you. I believe it's a total of $214,000 that's looking for a federal grant of 90% and then also a state grant of 5%, leaving a 5% local match. So for approximately $11,000, we leverage a little over $200,000. The project is the rotating beacon at the airport actually failed late this last winter, and that's a required equipment, so we had to purchase that light and get it put up. But we didn't want to, at the time, we knew we wanted to improve the light in the near future. The near future came sooner than we expected. So we had to replace the light, and the project was to do the light on a more modern pole that we don't need a crane to service it every time. And so so our engineering firm has combined that beacon that we already purchased with this project and also with the seaplane base ramp rebuild. By doing that, then we actually can leverage the funds to get reimbursed for the beacon itself rather than when we just purchased it. I think that's probably the important point of this.
Okay. Questions, comments? Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As smart move to connect those dots so that reimbursement can happen. My question is about Beacon Head in particular. I know that when it first came in, it was quite a shock to the people on the south shore of Devil's Track. So have there been any improvements made to the beacons to protect the neighbors across the lake?
If I understand you correctly, as far as just the lighting, the sweep of the light,
Yeah.
that's the same, and that's a standard FAA angle that has to be
Okay,
met.
so it has to be by
Right,
FAA
right.
standards. It's not
And this
anything we
beacon
can-
wasn't any different than the old one. I only received one call.
I'm talking about the old one now. I'm
Oh,
not
oh,
talking
okay.
about like, is a new one the same? Have any improvements been made in the new beacons?
Only to the quality of the light, not the angle
Okay.
of the light. Yeah.
Okay, so can you say more about the quality?
It's just a better bulb, lasts longer, uses less electricity, things like
Okay,
that.
but still just as bright
Yeah,
and
right.
has to go as far.
It's
and-
still gonna shine in whoever's eyes it was shining in before. It's still going to.
Okay, it's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Bershine?
No comments. Thanks for all you do.
Yep.
Yeah.
No problem.
Very busy guy.
Commissioner Dukirk?
I tried really hard to get a letter H in the beacon, and they just won't go for it, because then I figured if it shined in someone's house, they knew to call me and get me about it, but just couldn't.
Wow, that's a huge direction. I think it's like a letter H in the beacon.
So it'll flash H around the neighborhood, you know?
Gotta have cloud cover.
I tried.
No question.
Motion to approve.
Support?
Any further questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And I will emphasize it's in our budget.
Yes.
It's in the
Yeah.
airport budget.
The airport,
Yes.
yeah, in your budget.
Yes, correct.
And then the second airport item is the work order for RSNH to do the work for this project. And the request is to approve it subject to receiving the grant offers. And then allowing the board chair and myself to sign the agreement.
Okay. Commissioner Deschamps, any questions?
No.
Comments?
No questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions. I would make a motion to approve the professional service agreement, work order 2018-01 with RSNH for design, bidding, construction, administration, FAA closeout, airport plan sheet update, et cetera, contingent is the important word there, upon receiving the grant offers from the FAA and the state. Thank you.
Support. Any more comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Lisa, thank you for waiting. Lisa and Molly will be talking about a contract.
And I think Lisa is looking at me because we didn't have a whole lot of conversations. And I'm willing to talk about this contract. Lisa and I have been working together to kind of manage the project that the county signed on for as both a fiscal agent of two grants. This is the mountain bike trail connector project that you heard about at the last board meeting through the contract that we had with Superior Recycling Association. This is the contractor that the county must engage in order to comply with the grant agreements that we've already signed. So this is a pretty simple 5-page contract. The complexity comes in also incorporating all the terms and conditions of the other agreements that we've already entered into. The grant agreement with the DNR for the legacy grant, the grant agreement with the state for the FRTP funds, or Federal Recreational Trail, TP. Program.
Recreational Trail
Thank
Program.
you. And third, the contract with SCA. So this contractor has to build the trail in the way that we've agreed we would build it, in the corridor that the U.S. Forest Service has designated and reviewed for environmental impact. They have to abide by all of the conditions of the grant agreements, which incorporate, not violating federal environmental laws and Endangered Species Act, et cetera. And finally, this contract incorporates all of the bid documents, which you've also already seen and approved, which describe the specifications for the project. This is, it's called IMBA, Certified Trail Building Techniques. IMBA stands for the International Mountain Biking Association. With the recommendation of Superior Cycling Association, the county requested that the trail be built in this way. My understanding is IMBA certified trail building techniques ensure that the trail is sustainable. In other words, it stays where you put it, despite all of the mountain bikes we hope will travel on it. So it's not going to crumble into a trout stream. It's not going to break down, so the county has to repair it because the county is agreeing to maintain this trail for 20 years. We've already signed on to that obligation as part of our grant agreement. Finally, it's going to be as safe a trail as mountain bikers can expect through the IMBA certified trail building techniques. So all of those kind of conditions and contingencies are built into this contract. The amount of the contract, I'm sure you're interested in knowing about. The bid amount will cover the first 2 segments of the Connector Trail project, and also falls under the amount that we have been awarded already for these grants, the Legacy Grant and the FRTP grant, by enough that we believe there's a sufficient cushion to accommodate reasonable work order change orders. So, as we've mentioned, whenever Lisa has come to the board or Tim Kennedy, this kind of arrangement is kind of new to the county in that we're acting as a project manager without an actual project manager, professional, architect or like ORB type entity involved. So we're really relying on Lisa's position to make sure that we're compliant with our grant agreements. And Brady and Lisa and I have met regarding the billing requirements, and we're trying to put as much into the agreements to accommodate so everybody understands what their specific responsibilities are for this project to protect the county from any kind of disaster that could come about by building this trail. So I'm available for questions, and Lisa is too.
I guess I wonder when, Lisa, when you came last time, it was to approve the 7 mile of the trail. Now, is this going to be the whole trail, the 15 mile?
Thank you, Manager. As Molly said, this is to cover the A and B segment, so it'd be that 7.3 roughly miles at this point.
Okay.
And then SCA is currently looking for funding to be able to finish the last segment as well.
Okay. But this part, if it's approved, would go ahead for this year?
Correct.
Okay.
this is the same project, it's just a different role. So, SCA has taken on the role of assisting the county with project management, inspection services, reporting back to the county how the project is going, and making sure that it's, the workmanship is up to snuff, since they're experts on how to build the trail. And the contractor is doing the trail building itself.
Okay.
So, SCA is assisting kind of in a supervisory role for the county. That's the agreement that was signed last week, or at the last board meeting.
Okay. Questions, comments, Commissioner Deschamps?
Oh, I was just, she answered the question about your question about the 7.3 miles. But I would like to, well, I don't know if we can or not, but it would have been nice to reach out for more bids and get more than one bidder on this.
Was that possible to have more bidders?
Well, we had hoped to have more bidders, but the first bid, there were 0, and so the second time out, there was only 1. And partially just because this type of building is becoming more and more popular, so it's harder to get professional builders to come up to this area, so that's why this bid was accepted, because there wasn't any foreseen possibilities of getting more if we opened it up a third time.
And the bidding took place at the best time of the year. It started late last fall, if I recall. And then, so it wasn't like we tried to bid it in June or something.
Okay.
We did discuss all of this when we approved the bid.
Yeah.
Except for now Molly got a little trigger word in my head, so we're responsible for the next 20 years. And
For
we
all
do
the
know
gravel
that
to
Cook County
stay.
does have disasters, as you stated, as in windstorms, ice storms, snowstorms, and so are we responsible when all the trees fall down on the trail? Because I doubt this contractor's gonna come back and pick those up for us.
Well, and technically, SCA is the one that's been designated to do the trail maintenance over those 20 years. And that's part of worked in with the contract with SCA.
Not to function out of fear, just like you said,
Yes, I was gonna
disaster.
say, are
was
you
like,
afraid?
I'm not afraid, I just know it's gonna happen, and how are we going to ascertain it? But
Yeah,
I'm-
and just
I'm
for
fine.
background, we have the same agreements for all of the snowmobile,
I know.
ski, and
I know,
ATV
disasters
trails.
have
so,
happened, and they've
yeah.
come in and asked us for money to fix those disasters.
Worst scenario. Be ready. Okay. Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, it looks good to me. Well, thanks for all the work. It seems to be, I don't have any questions. Well done.
Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions. And I would make the motion unless somebody else would like to.
Go for it.
Okay. I've moved to approve the execution of the agreement for Trail Builder Work Tofty to Lutz and Connector Mountain Bike Trail with Rock Solid Trail Contracting, LLC, in substantially similar form as the attached draft, contingent on final approval by the county attorney and the county administrator, which.
Any further comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
1. Thank you. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa and Molly. So, let's see here, Brady, election judges?
So I'm asking you to approve the list of election judges to serve at the 2018 primary election and the 2018 general election, Cook County. The list is on the back. Those people that have contacted and are coming in, they will take training prior to the primary election. And just to note that we may need additional judges for the general election, and we would come back with a supplemental list at that time.
Okay, looks like you have a good staff.
Yeah, I think the majority are returnees, so we have a pretty good experienced staff.
So not a lot of training?
The training's required,
Yeah.
regardless of how good they are. But,
Oh, so they come back all
but
the
you
time.
need it, because it's
Okay,
only every
right.
2 years, and it's,
Right.
there's not a lot of reminder as to what you did
Yeah.
2 years ago, so you always need the refresher.
Any questions, comments? Commissioner Severson?
No questions. I support this.
I support.
Okay. No questions. Motion to approve.
Support.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You get your staff.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, moving on to administrators' report. Updates. All that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'll start with the capital projects update, which I handed out earlier. And if you recall the capital projects, if you look at the second page of the summary that I gave you, we had the courthouse roof and windows, which we're still planning on bidding and getting done this fall. LEC windows, community center playground money, which we've allocated, and Diane is managing those projects. The community center skating rink, the warming house, and the Hovland Public Works facility. And the skating rink, the warming house, and the Public Works facility are projects that we work with the Meyer Group to develop bid specs and to bid those projects out. At our last meeting, I asked you to approve the bid for the low bidder, dependent on our ability to negotiate to our financial constraints. And the community center skating rink, we accepted that bid with the low bidder, and we're moving forward with that. The warming house, we had to reject all bids because we weren't able to meet the financial parameters on that. And we'll be negotiating a different scope for that project so that we can get that done within the funds that we've allocated through the capital improvement bonding issue. In the Hovland Public Works facility, we value engineered that project, but it still came in several $100,000 more than we had allocated for it, and we don't have other funds to make that up. So our recommendation is that we would bid that in February of 2019, rebid, and see if we get additional interested parties. So at this point, we rejected the bid on the warming house, rejected all bids on the Hovland Public Works facility, and the construction on the skating rink. We approved several months ago the contract with Becker Arena Products to refinish the boards, and that work is included in the bid for the skating rink project. Also included in the packet that I handed out is a copy of the bid tabs for those three projects. So you can see those, and I can answer questions that you might have about those. And maybe this is the time to take a break and ask if there are questions about the capital projects, primarily the three projects that were bid out through the Meyer Group.
Questions? Commissioner DeShawn?
I would actually like to see the breakdown on the bid for the skating rink, not just a big number here. I'd like to see the breakdown
Yep.
on it.
I can get you copies of all the bid documents.
Commissioner Dukert?
Well, no questions.
Anybody else?
No questions.
Okay.
No questions. It's,
Okay, thank you on that summary.
And then, personnel issues, we have two items. One is, Judy Hill contacted each of the commissioners and all the department heads to do an evaluation of the administrator. And those that were done were turned in, were collated, were summarized, and last week, Judy and Board Chair Storley and myself sat down and reviewed those comments, and you have a copy of the summary of that evaluation. And we just I pulled it off of the consent agenda because we just need the board to acknowledge that summary was done and completed. Primarily, my comments would be that I'm proud of the work that we did as a board, as a team, as department heads, and if I review the accomplishments that we all made together last year, it's a pretty significant amount of work that got done, and some pretty significant planning and basic things related to the status of our employees and the contracts that we have. And I just look forward to us continuing to plan for a sustainable future as Cook County.
Okay. Thank you on that.
So we should have a board motion to accept that summary of the evaluation.
I will hear a motion on that.
I move that we accept the county administrator's summary of the presentation on it.
I'll second
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just didn't want to go to acceptance without commenting on the accomplishments, because they are substantial, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I just, the evolution of government in these past few years, I think, has been substantial, and we are in a good place right now. It feels very good, and I'm just grateful, Jeff, for your leadership and your knowledge and intelligence in helping us accomplish these things. Many of them have been in the works for many, many years, but they have not come to fruition until these past 3 years. So I just think it's we're in a really good place. I really appreciate us and you and Brady and everybody who participated in this process.
It's pretty good since all 5 of us have a different opinion of the process.
Yeah, it is.
Is
To
there
really
a
to
copy
arrive
of
at a
that for
good
the-
spot.
Yes.
For the
Yep.
minutes and
Yep.
board pack.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's a really good observation, that
Besides
you don't
the
necessarily
5 of
have
us.
to be on the same exact page to
Right.
arrive at a good place together.
Yeah, all the department heads and all the
Yep.
personalities and the public. And
Yeah.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is a lot to juggle.
We are the jugglers.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Where was I?
Sorry.
Okay.
That gets you distracted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then
Okay.
one more personnel item, Madam Chair and Commissioners, is that we had a personnel issue that came up, and you received a brief on that, and the nature of the situation was egregious enough that that it was recommended that we go straight to a dismissal of the 2 employees, Roland Baird and Lisa Wallers, as our maintenance or custodial staff at the YMCA. And walking through the steps of the contract and the documents, we reviewed that, we held that hearing, and we did follow up with the recommendation that they be dismissed. And what I do need is the board to affirm that decision.
I will make a motion to approve the 2 dismissals.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Brian and I are working on a recommendation on what it is we want to do for replacement of staffing in that position. So we'll be bringing that to you in August. As far as administrators update, the Budget Committee has met twice. We've scheduled an additional meeting in August because we know we're getting into crunch time. So we'll be having additional meetings with that. And one of the things that I want to make sure, and I'll follow up with Julie by way of scheduling, is that we plan on having holding township or district-wide budget meetings like we have the past couple of years. And if you're interested in doing that, we're asking for your help in scheduling a date and a place that works for you. And we would ideally schedule those between August 15th, after we get through the primary, and September 15th, before we have to make a preliminary levy decision. So I'll ask Julie to get a note out to all of you and ask for your help in scheduling those meetings. We did approve the transportation planning process with ARDC, and now we're stepping through the process of getting that started. And we're looking to identify a steering committee, and I have a couple of ideas of who from a commissioner basis would be interested in serving on that steering committee, but I'd like for you guys to recommend or select for who would be interested in being on the steering committee for the transportation planning process. I'm assuming Commissioner DeShaw would be interested in being on that steering committee. And with your support, then we'll bring a steering committee recommendation to the first August board meeting. Put that on consent agenda for us to approve that. And then one last update is, I know we've talked about the fact that the school is doing a major renovation project and a building project, and part of that is necessitating that we take care of some of the roof that we're responsible for at the YMCA, because they're tying into that. And then there's another section of the roof that we're looking at doing because there's a roofing company mobilized, and we can do it now when it's needed before it actually, we have a leaking problem or a damage roof problem. So we're working to do that, and I'll have some final numbers for you at the August meeting. But we're working forward. That budget number, I think we talked, was anywhere from $80,000 to $150,000, and final numbers are not in yet, but they're coming in that range. And we're taking the opportunity to, like I said, utilize this contractor who's already mobilized and doing it as a piecework time and materials process while they're here working on the school. So I'll have those numbers for you to finally approve, but just a reminder that that's out there. And that is all I would have.
Okay. Moving on to commissioner concerns, reports, meetings. Commissioner Dishkirk?
Administrator Cadwell, you did a WTIP interview on Speak Your Piece, kind of, and talked about possibly having board training. Would that be at the beginning of next year, since we're in the midst of budget and a whole bunch of other stuff and an election?
I've had conversations with Commissioner Storley and Bersheim about putting together another strategic planning or a board workshop once we get past the new year, because we know we'll have at least one new member of this board. The Speak Your Piece project, I'm working with Duluth Superior, and Rob Korwath is their representative on that. We could invite them up here this fall and have that conversation and adopt that beforehand, or we could do it after the new year too. So I'm open as to the timing on that. There's good reason to wait until after the election. There's also a good reason to just move forward and say this is a priority for this current board. So I think that's really up to your discretion.
Okay. I just thought it was a good interview, and with all the social media, I know that I myself fail in responding to the public, and so I would love to have tools and ways to communicate better.
Okay.
But I do understand waiting until the new year to do it. I just don't want it to get lost.
Good point. Anything else? Meetings to note?
We got that Forest Service meeting July 30th in Beaver Bay.
Yeah, and I
For
planned
on
on
the
going, I
grade.
think, and it wasn't that clear who was supposed to be there, but I think Commissioner DeShaw and I talked, and we could both go, if that's all right.
Commissioner Bersheim, I believe that's appropriate. I will be attending as well, and Kristen Foster will be there as well. So,
Is that the Lemon Cafe or something?
Lemon Wolf, I think it's right
It's
next to
tiny.
the fire department there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Nice place.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, you have a nice lunch.
Well, I don't know if we're having lunch. It's at
Well.
1:30, but.
It's at the meeting's at
We'll go
1:30.
early.
You could go early. Anything else to note?
I believe on August 10th in Grand Portage, the restoration will be done on our stone bridge this week, so there will be a ceremony and whatnot with the drum group and Park Service and Grand Portage Tribal Council and myself. And
What day is that? August
it'd be
10th?
Friday.
Is it Friday?
Friday,
And
August
I will
10th?
let you know,
Oh,
or let
yeah.
Julie know what time it is, but
Yeah.
it
She'll
was a
get it to
pretty,
us.
Oh, yeah.
you know, that was a Cook County Park Service Tribal Council BIA project,
awesome.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you would get the details to Julie, we'll make sure that we get it out to everybody.
yeah, it's that Friday of rendezvous days, so.
Okay.
Oh, tied in with that. That's
Yeah.
good,
Good idea.
Mhm.
Nice marketing.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna miss that.
Yeah, I'll get that to Julie so we can get it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
And on the 31st, we have our groundbreaking, our Golden Shovel groundbreaking celebration in Lutsen for our One Roof to come in and work on our apartments and get all that going. And the nice thing is that Alta McWaters, who lives on a family heritage area there, was given the privilege of giving and naming the road and the new apartments, which I'm probably not gonna pronounce this right, Bobby.
Alta
Alta Mikan?
Makana.
Makana.
Mikana? Okay, that's the road, and the apartments are the Four Directions, right? Let's see.
Direction dwellings.
Four Direction Dwellings, yeah. Okay, so that's at 1:30 on the 31st of July, and we're posting this now in case we have an attendance of commissioners. So we're off and running with our housing developments. Anything else?
So the four directions are north white, east yellow, south black, and west red, which is important. And it was originally Alta's property
Yes.
that Arrowhead built.
Right.
So
That's their homestead, yeah.
we are incredibly grateful to Alta for being
Right.
a part of this process with us and
Yes.
coming up with the name. That was pretty important, so.
Right, include as many as we can in these projects. Okay, there is no other information we need or concerns. I will hear a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
It's not about you, Molly.
I know.
We didn't cancel right when you walked in.
Don't take it personally.
It's not all about me?
Well, just this one time. Just that one time.